This is the Rage5-S Table Saw from Evolution Power Tools, and today I'm going to be giving you an honest review after 5 years of use. What's up woodworkers, Ben here, and I've been using the Evolution Rage5-S Table Saw for about 5 years now, and I thought it was about time I did a review on it. I'll talk you through the features on the saw, the overall basics, how it works, and most importantly the good and the bad points, along with a few upgraded features that you might want to consider. And for anyone who decides that this is the saw for them, I've got a discount code as well that I'll be sharing later in the video. So let's get started. There are a few reasons why I bought this saw as my first table saw, but primarily it consisted of 3 main points. Firstly, it's got a fence that runs the full depth of the table. I've seen a few entry-level saws where it only comes about halfway. As a result, it looked a bit flimsy. I also had this sliding table, which again, you only really see on much more expensive cabinet saws. And thirdly, it was a reasonable price. I bought this at about 330 quid 5 years ago. So let's take a look at some of the key features that stand out on this saw. So it comes with this mobile stand that helps it fold up for moving it around. I used to have it on this so that I could fold it away when not in use, but to be honest, I wanted an outfeed table and I generally left it stood up. So I decided to take it off the stand and mount it into a workbench. It bolts back onto the stand really easily, so I've just kept it underneath my workbench in case I ever need it. The wings extend out on both sides, taking the usable space between the fence and the blade to about 660 centimetres, which provides a really useful work surface. I've made a little panel to fill in the gap, and I've made brackets out of scraps of plywood. It just gives me a little bit more support and means that I can keep it fully extended without dropping stuff down it all the time. The fence runs along this rail here and attaches at both ends, which for me is a real plus, as some of the entry-level saws only have a fence that runs halfway, which can give a lot of flex at the end. You can adjust the fence really easily with these 2 bolts to get it perfectly parallel to your blade and or mitre slot, and you've got a measurement scale on the front here. But I set that with the extension closed and then I pulled it all out to full capacity and never really looked to reset it again. I just use a tape measure now anyway, as there can be discrepancies between different measuring tools, so I like to use the same tape measure that I'm actually using on my projects. Now, I regularly see people on Facebook asking what this thin fence is for, and some people say that it's for cutting thin pieces of wood, but frankly, this isn't the case at all. I'll be honest though, I very rarely use this attachment unless I'm cross-cutting and I need a block to take the reference off for each cut. I set it to before the blade, and that way it means I don't have any risk of the piece binding between the fence and the blade when I've made my cut. Over on the other side of the saw, you've got your mitre gauge, which I'll be honest, is pretty average. The slot runs fairly loose, which seems to be a running theme across all table saws that come with a mitre gauge, which is why I see these really expensive aftermarket mitre gauges out there. However, the faults of the mitre gauge on this saw are completely eradicated due to the sliding table. This is the feature that I really like and is one that's not usually found on table saws at this price point. What it does is it allows you to lock your mitre gauge in place, meaning all that wiggle is taken out, and it also gives you loads more control when cross-cutting. I still tend to use my mitre saw for cross-cuts, but I do like to use this to create tenons when making frame and panel doors, for example. The saw does come with a blade guard and hose that connects to the back of your saw for the dust extraction. And I'll tell you now that if you're looking for a saw with great quality dust extraction, then this one probably isn't for you. But again, I don't think there are many saws at this price point that have particularly good dust extraction. I also think that this is partly down to the level of dust extractor you have. I'm just using a shop vac, which is great for my workshop, but I could probably do with something a little more powerful for the bigger tools like this and my planer thicknesser. The only other item of note is the zero clearance insert on the top. My saw came with the original insert, which was pretty rubbish to be honest, but the guys over at Evolution have upgraded this and now sell it as an aftermarket part for people who already have the saw, and now bundle it in as well as part of the package for people who buy the saw new. I did a video on the zero clearance insert, so I'll add a link to that in the description if you want to know more. You can adjust the position of the blade using the screws in each corner here, which allows you to adjust the position in line with the mitre slots. The start and stop buttons are on the front here, And I've seen a bunch of people with 3D printers making the big stop buttons to give an easier target for when you need to switch the saw off. I've never really had a problem with the buttons as they are, but I might upgrade to one of those paddle stop switches in the future. But it's definitely not something you need for this saw. While I'm talking about starting up, it's worth noting that the saw doesn't have a soft start function. Again, not something I've ever been that bothered about, to be honest, but I've seen people add these on as aftermarket parts. But my recommendation is to probably save the money and the effort, as it's not really needed and it will definitely void the warranty. You can adjust the blade height here by turning the handle, and you can adjust the angle by pushing the lever in and turning it, which gives you a nice control over the specific angles. That being said, I use a digital angle gauge rather than relying on the measure on the saw itself. If you wanted to do it quickly, you can just unlock the lever and then move it without pushing the handle in. It just doesn't give you as much control. Let me tell you a couple of features that I'm not so keen on. I've already mentioned that the dust extraction isn't the greatest, and as such, dust can get caught in the blade guard under the tool. Usually you'll find this out when you go to lower your blade and you realise that it won't go all the way down. You can remove the guard really easily and clean it out, which keeps things simple. Because I've mounted mine into my workbench, I've taken the decision to remove the blade guard, and I'll be doing some custom dust extraction for it at some point as well. However, if you're keeping it on the mobile stand where the blade could be exposed, especially when folded away, then you're probably going to want to keep that blade guard on there. While we're under here, you can also see the motor, and due to the way that the saw is made, the motor is essentially kind of floating or hanging. This doesn't cause an issue, but I've seen people on Facebook groups post videos of the blade wobbling around and asking if it's a concern. From my experience, the answer is not really, and this is just the motor wobbling as you raise or lower it. It always settles in the right place. If you're getting excessive play, then that might be a time to flag it as a warranty issue. So the big question is, if I had the time again, would I buy this saw again? And the answer is a resounding yes. And if you decide this is the tool for you, then I've got a 5% discount code with Evolution Tools that you can use. I'll add the link into the description as well. And if you've got any questions about the tool at all, please leave me a comment below. In the meantime, you're going to want to check this video out next.